Hello, everybody, and welcome to Vegan Business Talk. I'm your host, Katrina Fox. My guest today is Bailey Ruskus, also known as Chef Bay. Classically trained at Le Cordon Bleu in San Francisco, Bailey's been in business for herself for 10 years, but 3 years ago, she made the switch to become a completely vegan business. Love it. Awesome. She's been a long-time warrior of endometriosis and has discovered her own tools to heal her body through food and health. Now based in San Diego, she cooks for top executives, professional athletes, and many others, hosts virtual cooking classes in her online membership, and hosts corporate wellness programs around the globe. Welcome to the show, Bailey.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm so excited.
Very excited to talk to you, particularly because you veganized your business, and we're going to get into that very soon. But first of all, I'm curious. So when people choosing names for their business, it's often something that people can spend a lot of time about, and it's like, well, do I, build a brand, like a personal brand around my own name, or do I do something else? Do I choose something a bit more, a bit different? You've kind of built yours around your personal brand. Not only your own name, Bailey Ruskus, but particularly Chef Bay. Tell us why you made that decision.
I mean, it was a lot of trial and error. Like my first business name was called Bite Me San Francisco, which is I cringe at my old business cards now, but you just don't know what you're doing. And then I transitioned it was called Straight to the Source. So that was like the second name. And then I ended up I started working on retreats. It was like part of my business for a really long time. And I was cooking for New York Times bestselling authors and on like an author retreat. And they were like bouncing around names. And like, I kind of was part of this like workshop, and they all were just like, this business name just doesn't work for you. And we feel like you should be, and authors are such like creative, like, existential types. And they're like, you should be Chef Bay. Like, this just sounds like you. And when I lived in San Francisco, my friends, I definitely like partied a lot and in my early 20s. And they would always call me Bebe. They'd be like, oh, Bebe's out, when I was like having a good time. So I kind of thought it was just like perfect that they said it was Chef Bay. And then from that moment on, like from the whole retreat, like all the authors were calling me Chef Bay. And then my family started calling me Chef Bay. And then my friends started catching on. And then I was like, you know what? This is kind of awesome. I'm just going to like take this and run with it. And I haven't actually thought about it since. So it's funny you asked me this question. I'm like, I don't know. It just kind of stuck and it works and people like it. And now Chef Bay is like in bold letters on my book. So it's here to stay.
I love that. I love that you found something that fits and that it's okay to change the name. Sometimes you just grow out of an older name and you rebrand into something else. So I love that you found something that works and that fits for you. So 3 years ago, you were running a successful business. So tell us so before you veganized your business, give us a little snapshot of what your business looked like. So you've been running it for a few years. I say you're classically trained with Le Cordon Bleu, amazing chef training. What did your business look like? What were you doing at that time before you decided to
go vegan? Yeah. So my business has had like so many different life forms. When I look back, it's just like, it's so funny. I have so much compassion for the younger version of myself, just like, winging it basically. But when I lived in San Francisco, my business was primarily private chefing. So I would private chef for top executives and, like athletes and things like that. And that was like the big chunk of my business. When I lived in San Francisco. And then I ended up actually moving to Colorado for a year and was dealing with my own health journey and decided that I was going to start working for people with food allergies. As I was in school for nutrition, I was like, I kind of want to like stop just making fancy plates and charging a lot of money and kind of transition into working for more like everyday people who really need food for healing. And at the time I still wasn't plant-based. But that's when I kind of like was learning a lot, and that was my business. It was private chefing again, just kind of, and I was also leading retreats. So I was leading retreats on the Mayan Riviera and kind of teaching and talking about food. And then when I moved to San Diego, basically my business went vegan because I went vegan. And I remember actually I was cooking, and at this time I was doing like cooking classes and like consulting for restaurants and other business owners and private chefing and like one-on-one coaching. Like I was kind of like doing all the things, Jill of all trades, as some people call it. And I was cooking, what was I doing? I think I was gutting a fish, and I had gone vegan, and I was actually listening to um James Aspie. He's a big vegan
I know
activist. He's
James,
actually
he's a friend of
Australian.
mine. Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. So I was, oh my gosh, that's great. So I was listening to one of his speeches because he's just like such an amazing speaker. And I'm literally crying listening to this speech as I'm gutting a fish for a client. And I was just like, oh my God, like I can't keep doing this anymore. But I just didn't know how to change because, when you're a classically trained chef and all your clients are used to you cooking meat and with dairy and stuff, like it was just really hard. It was a very hard decision for me to make to go vegan. But once I did, I just felt this like huge weight off my shoulders. I felt like just so much better spiritually, and like everything just kind of like personally made more sense. My clients like weren't that into it at first, but I just made the change. I had to. It was like a personal decision. And I'm just not someone that can. And I was for a long time. I've worked in restaurants and bars, and I've always kind of used to do that on the side with my business just to get more experience. And I just no longer could work and do something for like my life's work that didn't like stand right with my ethics personally.
Wow. Now you mentioned, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
James will be very happy. I'll make sure he sees this episode.
Oh,
He'll be really happy
that.
to know the impact that he's had. So it's interesting you say that your clients weren't into it at the beginning. So tell us about the challenges, because it is a bit of a difference, especially with something like food. So how did you go about it? Like, did you make this big announcement, say, hey, right now I'm just doing plant-based stuff or, or vegan stuff? Or did you kind of do it quietly and stealthily? Like, how did you go about doing it? And what were some of the reactions you got?
Yeah. So, I mean, online it was really harsh, because I go from sharing pictures of like avocado toast with eggs on it, or like, just whatever. I go from posting like my typical like trendy kind of posts. And at the time, like 4 years ago, 4 years ago, it wasn't like trendy to be plant-based. You're still kind of like
On
like the
fringe a
black
little,
sheep,
yeah.
Yeah, totally. And so I announced that I was going plant-based for my health like months before. And because everyone online had seen like my health struggles, like my endometriosis struggles. It's just like having endometriosis is just the struggle is just like such a good word for it. And then I had decided that like I'm no longer going to be posting anything else. And I kind of made little announcements here and there, but I was honestly afraid because when I did make these little announcements, I got so many haters online.
Really?
People just like not being nice, not being supportive, having all these like snide comments. And at the time, like I wasn't ready for that, Now I can handle them no problem. Like whatever, trolls, like get out of here. But at the time it was really hard for me because I was also healing and dealing with my own battles. And I was also in a kind of vulnerable place in my business because I had only been a San Diego resident for like a year. So I was still like freshly starting my business all over again, which felt like for the second time. So it was definitely really hard. And like, I lost clients for sure. People were just not into it. They were like, well, like, could you make an exception for me? And I couldn't, and there's one family that I still would cook fish for here and there because I just like loved them so much. And they had already, had such amazing results with their health. So I just didn't want to just like abandon them. So I like kind of helped wean them off. And, at first they were like, we're not going to eat tofu. You're crazy. And so now I'm actually still cooking for that family. They're like one of my only private chef clients still. But yeah, now they just like love the vegan food. They love it. And it's so cool to see like the transition because it is a slow process. And as much as I wanted to just be like, okay, I'm cutting everybody off of meat and dairy, like, sorry, you kind of have to realize you're dealing with like, generations of traditions. And, it's like you got to like ease people in and be compassionate and take it really slow. So yeah, it was really rough, actually. It was like really intense. My husband was like supporting me financially, and like it was just like it was a mess. But once I finally just committed and stayed in that commitment, finally I started to get like so much momentum because I was plant-based that it just like it kind of took off from there.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you shared that and in such depth as well, because I think it shows people, yes, somehow, when you make a decision that's maybe people have been following you and then suddenly you make this big change. Yes, you're going to lose some followers, you're going to get some trolls, but when you really, and then you can, like you say, you went through that period where you initially lost clients or lost some work, but when you really kind of stand in your power, or, kind of, say, no, this is me, this is what I'm about, you then actually, like you said, you do start to attract people who are like, oh yeah, I want her because she's plant-based. So yeah, I love that you shared that. Another thing that you mentioned is that, you've moved. So you were in San Francisco, you moved in San Diego. And it's interesting, when I read that you were a private chef, I thought, oh, why isn't she in LA? Because I could imagine, be lots of business there, for celebrities, private chefing. So totally. Why San Diego? And can you talk us through, because that is interesting when you're doing something like what you're doing, where it involved, certainly at the time, I know you've shifted to more online stuff as well, but when you move to a new place and the business is kind of local, you do almost have to start again, and that comes with its own challenges.
Yeah, San Diego was a random choice. I moved back in with my parents in my mid-20s because of my health issues, and I was desperate to, and they live in Colorado, and I was just desperate to get out. And so I actually had this opportunity to help open up this cooking school for people with cancer and autoimmune diseases. And the cooking school didn't end up working out. Within the first 3 days of me moving to San Diego, it just blew up, basically. The contracts, the whole thing was just they were being shady, and I just wanted to very much underpay me, very much the whole thing was just really just not for me. And I was old enough at the time to be no, I'm not going to sign a contract. It's not something that I'm into. So I was basically living in San Diego with no money. I didn't know really anyone. I had one friend, and I was living on her floor, and I was okay, here we go again. I'm just going to start from scratch, start all over. And I ended up I swallowed my pride. I got a bartending job. I was I'm just going to try to make this work. And I grew up going to LA in the summers. My grandma lived in LA growing up, and I just knew that LA was just not the place for me. It was just too much traffic, too much smog. I love LA. I love to visit, but I'm just going to leave it at that. I just want to visit LA. And San Diego just has this really great energy to it. It's so beautiful. It's so much slower than San Francisco. People are more smiley. It's just an energy. So I really wanted to be a part of that. And I just made it work. And while I bartended, I made my business work. And I just was I literally took my pride out of the room and was I'm just going to put my nose down, do what I need to do. And I'm actually so glad, because I was bartending and I met my husband because he bartended there. Wow. So we fell in love, and then I was able to quit. So I think it had its purpose for sure.
Absolutely. The universe brought you there. I love that. And thank you for sharing that, because I think that's really helpful, because sometimes when people see where people are at right now, they're you've got this book out, which we'll be talking about shortly, or, private chef, you're leading global retreats, and it all looks very glamorous. And people think, oh, well, you must have started here and then it all just went success, success, success. And I love that you shared that. No, actually, there were times when you had to stop and start. And like you said, just, in order to make it work, you might have to go and get a part-time job or a full-time job even, and then start it again. So I really appreciate people like you sharing things because sometimes people don't always, do you know what I mean? They kind of want to, share the kind of the phoenix, the glamorous side. So I really appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, and I think it's really easy to look at someone's year 10 and compare it to your day 3. And it's really just the journey has been so windy, and it's just been when I first moved to San Diego too, even when I was bartending, starting my business, it was honestly the flakiest town I had ever been to. People doing consultations and then never answering my emails ever again, or people not showing up for consultations, or it was just so weird. And the whole thing with the contract, I was is this the place that I want to live? Starting my business seems so impossible right now. But you just got to stick it out. I feel for every 100 no's, there's going to be a yes somewhere in there. And you just have to it's hard to start a brand new community in a brand new place. And sometimes it just doesn't click right away. And it really didn't for me for over a year.
Over a year. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Nice. I'm glad you stuck there. I've actually been to San Francisco. I went actually in 2012 I don't know if you heard of Debbie Ford. She was running these shadow workshops, and I was staying with a friend in LA, and I got the train to San Diego, and I found, you know how vegans tend to find one another, there were 2 other vegans I found on the course, and at the end of the night we went to, and I can't remember the name of it, but we went to a lovely vegan restaurant and had a great meal, and then we hired one of those carriage type things where they drive you around the city, and it was absolutely lovely. So I get why you're in San Diego. It is beautiful.
Yeah, and I'm actually like on my way to San Francisco right now on my book tour, and I'm so excited. Like, I love San Francisco so much. There's an energy to the city that just is like no other place I've ever been. And yeah, I mean, my husband would never live there, so we could probably never go back, but it's so fun to visit.
I've only been to I've been to San Diego. That was San Diego.
Oh, you've been to San Diego, okay.
San Diego. And then San Francisco, I spent about 4 hours in during an airport thing. And so I've seen the Castro, and that's about it.
That's
wonderful.
The funnest part.
So you've been doing, like, your work consists of, well, certainly pre-COVID, it looks like you're getting back to some of that, is like with the private chefing, doing the hosting the retreats globally. Obviously, that came to a standstill in 2020. How did the COVID situation impact your business?
Oh my God, it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. Like, the governor came on, I'll just never forget this day. It was March 15th. And the governor came on the live airways, or whatever you want to call it. And he basically announced that California is in a statewide shutdown. All beaches are closed, like everything's closed, stay at home. And basically, right after that happened, I got call after call after call after call from my clients just canceling for the next extended amount of time. So I only had one client that stuck with me. And in literally the same hour, my husband got furloughed from his job because he was working in hospitality. And we canceled our wedding. Like, it all happened within an hour. And I was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Like, this is so crazy. All of our retreats everything was canceled. It was just kind of like, and I was not in a position to collect unemployment. So there was just like, it was just all of a sudden, it was like, okay, well, we're totally screwed all of a sudden. But it actually, like, COVID was the best thing that ever happened to my business, because I always say, like, when your back's up against the wall, that's when you find out who you really are. And I launched an online program first that completely flopped. Like, literally, I didn't have one person sign up. I was like, okay, well, this probably isn't going to work. But then I just was like, you know what, maybe I just need to tweak this. So I tweaked it a little bit, and I just actually hosted like a virtual online donation-based cooking class. And we had hundreds of people show up. People were so excited and so ready to cook with us. And we made like thousands of dollars for a donation-based class. And we were like, okay, like, maybe there's something to this right now. So we started doing the donation-based, or we started just like teaching cooking classes, kind of like, oh, we're teaching one this week or whatever. And we just had such a high attendance rate that then we actually got, I don't even know how it happened, but we started teaching virtual corporate wellness too, because all these corporate companies had all of this money to spend on their employees, but no one can hang out in person. So it was just like the perfect opportunity. I pivoted and I saw this opportunity in this online space, and I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but let's just like go for it and see what happens. And last year alone, we taught over 15,000 people virtually the power of plant-based food. And yeah, it was really, really amazing. It was honestly like mind-blowing. And through that, I actually got offered a book deal in the middle of it all. And it was pretty amazing, just because we just transitioned and pivoted. And, I think a lot with COVID, there's like the two people. There's the person that was like, oh, poor me, this sucks. I'm just going to wait for my checks for the government, blah, 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 blah. And like, I'm not bagging on those people at all. But then there's also the people that pivoted. And every single person that I know that pivoted is doing so well right now, because they saw an opportunity, they saw a global change, which in my opinion needed to happen. I wish that it happened differently, of course, but like, we needed change. We needed people to wake up to themselves and their families and health and all of these things. And I think this was like such a shake, like an awakening for a lot of people on so many different spectrums of it. And it's just, COVID's just been like the best thing for my business, honestly. Like, I hate admitting that.
I've had a few people say that who I've asked. So thank you for sharing that. So tell us about the marketing then. So what kind of marketing have you used that's been successful? Like you mentioned, you got hundreds of people showing up on a donation-based virtual cooking. How did you get them? Did you use paid advertising? Were they people already on your email list? Like, how did you? What's working right now in the market?
I have like a really solid Instagram following, and that's been like the thing that's just like really helped, just Instagram, honestly. But you know, I've tried to do paid ads before. I was a one-woman show for a really long time. Like, I started my podcast by myself. I was working by myself for, the first 9 years of my business. And when my husband got furloughed, I was like, do you want to come on full time and like help me and just like, let's just see what happens. And the second I hired him, it's like everything kind of changed because I was able to kind of delegate and we could kind of, change how we were doing everything. And it was really that. And then I started my podcast too, which was really helpful as well. It was also something I was terrified of doing. I think everything that I pivoted into doing in 2020, I was just like so scared because I didn't know what I was doing. I started my podcast on the voice memo app on my phone because I was just like, well, this is what I got. Like, let's do this and see what happens. But yeah, what was your original question, actually?
Yeah, just how the marketing that's working. So you mentioned Instagram. Yeah, so are you talking Instagram, like organic posts or like reels or stories? What would
Yes. So once reels came out, I like really like took that. I was kind of like I felt like a grandma on TikTok. I like didn't know what was happening. But then when reels came out, it felt a little bit more palatable. Honestly, I was like, TikTok, this is so wild. But now, honestly, TikTok is such an amazing tool. You can grow so quickly using TikTok. But yeah, I didn't have a marketing agency. I actually really want to hire one. But yeah, I was doing some Facebook ads on my own, but sometimes when you're doing Facebook ads, and you're not an expert at it, you just feel like you're kind of throwing money into the universe. And so, yeah, a lot of it was just like Instagram and people telling their friends and people sharing and just like word of mouth. And honestly, to this day, honestly, the podcast is great because when you have a podcast, probably like, you're able to make connections with people who are doing cool things, who also want to support you, like you're supporting them by having them on the podcast from, their kind of promotions as well. So I've just created, it's who you know, and there's so much truth to that because, especially for this book, when you're launching the book, it's all about community and like getting people to kind of help rally around you to get the word out about the book because, even you need lots of money to have a marketing agency and to like promote in that way.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned, so you went vegan. I noticed on your website, you don't use the word vegan a lot. And I wonder if that was a deliberate choice. And everyone's got different. I like to ask people this question because there's no wrong or right answer. Every business is different. I'm just wondering if you can just talk us briefly through a bit of your choice about, the word plant-based versus vegan and, how much you kind of use those words in your marketing material and branding.
Yeah, I think I go back and forth with it all the time. I feel like our website is always a work in progress and it always will be. I used to have this idea that, okay, website's done now. And it's just like, it's always just a work in progress. It's always going to grow and change as I grow and change, as the business grows and changes. And, I work with a lot of people who have chronic health issues, and a lot of people are really afraid of the word vegan. And I get it. There's a lot of just like under education around what it actually is. And there's people have bad experiences with vegan food that doesn't taste like anything. And it's also just like fear, like people just are afraid of what they don't know. And so for me, I just try to like stay focused on the fact of like, you can eat what you want and what you need, and really helping people eat more plant-focused foods. Because at the end of the day, like if I have a vegan business and I'm promoting veganism, that doesn't necessarily mean that my client is going to suddenly become a vegan overnight. So it's really about trying to just like relate to them and where they're at right now, because it's not like I've been a vegan forever. But now that I have my book is very much a vegan book. It's called Cook, Heal, Go Vegan. And so it really was kind of like my transition into like owning like, okay, this is about veganism. And yeah, it's been a really interesting kind of transition in kind of like, okay, well, being more plant focused to like, no, this is about vegan in all senses of the way that vegan is. And I'm really trying to kind of demystify this whole vegan word and kind of redefine what it means to be vegan in general. And it's people talk about angry vegans, but I have met far more not angry vegans than I've met angry vegans. So
I love that. I love that. So talking about the book, so yeah, you mentioned you've got the new book out. It's called Cook, Heal, Go Vegan. I was going to ask you how the book came about. You actually already touched on that in that you were doing it online, you were doing your virtual cooking classes, and you got noticed by a traditional publisher, one of the imprints of Macmillan. So they came to you because they could see it, which is, I think, is interesting, because I know and I've been published by traditional publishers and I've self-published, so I kind of know the difference. And it is interesting, I think, particularly nowadays, that publishers are looking for people with an audience, with a ready-made audience, so that they know there's a bit more of confidence that when they hire you, give you, your commission, and upfront and everything, that you're going to sell books. So it's interesting that they came to you. So was it one publisher that came to you and offered you a deal and you were like, yep, I'm happy to do it?
Pretty much. I mean, I had been putting, I'm all about manifestations and putting the feelers out into the universe. And so I have been manifesting a cookbook since I was a small child. I've been cooking in kitchens since I was 11. So it's really all I've ever done. And I idolized Emerald and Martha Stewart. And I don't know, I just loved these people who were TV personalities and also chefs, and just inspiring people to cook, because they inspired me to cook when I was a kid. And I always wanted to write a cookbook. And so the whole year before, I just kept telling people, oh, I'm writing a cookbook. And they'd be like, oh, who's your publisher? And I'd be like, I don't know. I'm just still deciding, when in reality, I was just just putting it out there. And they offered me a deal, and I came back with a counter offer, and they came back with a higher offer than my counter offer. I think once they realized my credentials and just all of my knowledge and everything, and I took it. I was like, yeah, let's do it. Why not? Because it was only 3 months before that, I was looking at my husband being like, what are we going to do? We're totally screwed. And then 3 months later, we get offered this amazing book deal. And Macmillan's a great distribution company, a great publishing company. And their smaller publishing is called Page Street. It's a little arm off of Macmillan. And I just really vibed with the whole team. And they just really took my ideas. They used the branding from my website. They used all the fonts that I like. So it was really just a team effort. And I really, after cooking for, New York Times bestselling authors, I got a whole view. And my mom's an author actually, and my brother's an author too. And my mom self-published, and my brother went with a traditional publishing company out of London. And so I was really able to see all of the different variables and all the different things that can happen. And I just didn't have $20,000-$30,000 to publish my own book. I just couldn't afford it. There was absolutely no way. And I also really wanted to use a traditional publishing company because I wanted the marketing. I wanted their awesome graphic design team. I wanted PR, I wanted all of these things that kind of come as a package deal. And I'm not going to make as much money, but for me, it's more about reach and reaching as many people as possible and getting the brand out there and getting my name out there and the message out there. And for me, a traditional publishing company was what I was always thinking that I wanted, especially for my first couple books while I'm still starting out.
Yeah, nice. And it's good that you've been able, you mentioned it's been a good team. So you've obviously presumably had control over your title and your book design, your cover design and content, rather than them kind of dictating. It's been more of a collaborative effort is what I'm hearing. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I did all the photos. I shot the cover shot. It was actually amazing. They didn't come back with anything for the photos. They didn't make me reshoot anything. They loved the cover from the beginning. So it's cool to see from an artist's perspective, it's cool to see that that's being received really well, because it's a little bit different. The cover of my book is hot pink, and I literally found a piece of plywood in my alleyway, and I was like, I'm going to spray paint this hot pink and try to use it for food photography. Had no idea it would be the cover of my book one day, but that's what I did. It was one of my lockdown, one of my lockdown activities,
Inspirations. I love it.
Exactly. And it ended up just becoming the cover of my book. I would say the one thing that we had the hardest time agreeing on was the title.
Interesting.
That was the hard, and it was actually the last thing we decided about the book. Everything about the book was finished except the title, because we just couldn't come to an agreement with the top guy at Macmillan. And it was just this whole back and forth. But I definitely held my ground.
So what did they want them? Did they not like the word vegan? Did they want the healing? What can you tell us about that?
They wanted more. They wanted it originally. They wanted it to be called A Beginner's Guide to Going Vegan, and it just felt very had been done before.
So very middle of the road. Yeah, Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And my online membership is called Cook Vibe Heal. And I just like I wanted to have a little bit, I don't know. And so it kind of we came to an agreement of a title. I don't know if I would have chosen it, myself, but it worked for them. And keywords wise, like it's epic because you write
Yeah.
heal in cookbooks, you write cook, you write go vegan. It's all popping up now. And it's working
Nice.
because we have been, for the last 2 weeks, we've been #1 on Amazon, #1 new release in vegan diets and books about endometriosis. So I think it's working.
Amazing. I love
Yeah.
that you have the confidence to kind of go back and say, hey, actually, no, I don't agree with this. And I love that you went back when they offered you the initial deal. You had the confidence to go back and say, no, actually, I'm worth more than this. I love that. I really hope people hear that, and that you got, like you said, you didn't even get just what you asked. You actually got a hire. So I love that you did that, and that
Oh,
you can do
yeah.
it in a good way. So you're not seen as difficult author, but you're someone who knows your worth,
No.
and it becomes this collaborative thing. So I think that's really useful for people to hear, to make sure you kind of stand your ground
Oh,
and to get
totally.
what you deserve. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that.
And like publishing is a business. So people have to think of that too. And it's a business deal, it's a business agreement. And when you publish through a traditional publisher, like that's a lot of the money that you're going to make, unless your book like really blows up and you're able to get royalties and stuff from it. But if you're able to get a bigger advance, then the publishing company, sorry about the siren, the publishing company is
That's okay.
probably going to spend more money on your marketing and spend more money on your PR. So the higher advance that you get, the more money and skin that they have in the game, and they're going to work way harder for you than if they give you a smaller advance and expect you to get more royalties at the end.
That's such good advice. I love that. So just to wrap up, a couple of questions. So you mentioned you have had endometriosis for quite some time and been in chronic pain.
Yes.
So I'm curious what impact that's had, not only on life, but on your business, particularly because you are self-employed. And when you work for yourself, you don't get the paid sick days. If you're in pain and you can't show up, basically, if you don't work, you don't get paid. So first of all, if you could just very briefly tell us, in case anyone's not sure exactly, what is endometriosis, very briefly, and what impact has it had on your life, and particularly as a business owner?
Yeah, so endometriosis is a chronic inflammatory disease. It's like a reproductive. It can be a reproductive disease mainly, but it also can spread into other parts of your body, and it affects the endometrial lining around your uterus. So it's basically cells that mimic your endometrial cells, and they basically develop in other areas of your body during your cycle. So it causes lots of cysts, lots of inflammation, lots of pain, like hormone imbalances, food intolerances, GI issues, you name it. Like I know women that have endometrial cysts on their lungs. Like it's literally just like, it just kind of attacks your whole body. And it's an inflammatory disease. So I've learned a lot more about endometriosis in the last 4 years than I've learned my whole life, mainly because there's not a lot of funding for endometriosis and women's health in general. And I hope that's something that like our very loud voices will eventually change. But yeah, I've had endo since I was 11, and I've just had to, like, my first period ever, I thought I was dying. Like, actually, I was very sick, and I was like, if this is what being a woman is like, I'm not down. Like, I want to go back to my childhood. Like, this is a rude wake up call to be, to my initiation into womanhood. And so, yeah, I just suffered super painful periods, like all of high school, all of my 20s. I mean, I still suffer today, but it's so much more manageable, so much more under control. I used to be on opiates and hormone replacements. Like they put me on like the highest amount of hormone birth control that you can be on when I was 11. And so my entire development just happened so quickly. And it just like was horrible for my mental health. It was like super traumatic, seeing doctor after doctor after doctor, specialist after specialist, especially on your reproductive system as a young woman. And, being a chef as well, like once I was in my 20s, my pain was just so unbearable because I just couldn't get really answers from anyone. And I was also working like a maniac. And so those two things just like really didn't help, and they kind of led to some drug addictions for me and like party addictions, just because I couldn't manage my pain and I didn't really feel supported. So yeah, it really led me into being like, I need to figure out what's going on. And I went back to school for nutrition and really started learning about our food system and really started learning about glyphosate and factory farming and all these chemicals that are in our everyday products and all of these things. And I was just like, oh my God, like no wonder I'm sick, and no wonder so many other people are sick. And that's kind of when I had that light bulb where I was like, I want to have a business that helps people. I want to have an impact in the world. I want to be able to go to sleep every night knowing that I helped even just one person, even if it's just from someone reading a post that I wrote, or the food that I'm making is actually helping heal someone instead of cause further disease. And all the food I was cooking before that was causing disease. It was causing more harm, not just in the client, but also in, the environment. So there's just a lot that goes into that. And it was like a lot of grieving period for me, because I don't know if grief is the right word, but I just felt so disgusted with myself once I kind of woke up to the realities. And when I finally started to heal myself, when I finally started to kind of feel better, like I always say being plant-based saved my life, because it's as much as endometriosis is as much as of a physical disease as it is like an emotional traumatic disease, because and like your question, like, was I working? It was so hard to work. Like when I moved to San Diego, my endo was the worst it had ever been. I think that's why my husband and I's relationship when we first started dating moved so quickly, because I was in so much pain and needed help from someone. I really needed a partner. It's hard to, be by yourself. And I couldn't work. I was, especially bartending, I was bartending on the 3rd floor rooftop, just, trying to make it work. And I would have to go into the bathroom and throw up from the pain, or my husband would find me, boyfriend at the time, crying in my car, on my 5-minute break or something. And so it's definitely really hard, and even to this day, I have days that I just I just had to tell myself, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. I just hype myself up through all the pain, trying to work, because it's still there, and it's not as loud of a voice as it once was. And that is so great, but it's definitely still there. So anyone that deals with endometriosis, I really, really feel for you, because it is really intense. But I also will say that there's so much hope to get it under control so that it doesn't control your life.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. That's that's challenging when you're trying to run a business at the best of times. It's challenging, what with
oh my God,
have that added physical and, like you say, emotional pain on top. So I mean, kudos to you for doing that, and great that you found a way to at least manage it a lot better, and through plant-based eating. I guess that's led to you having that point of difference, because you're not just a private chef, or not just someone who does the virtual cooking classes to tickle people's taste buds, so to speak. Of course you do that because you've got to make food delicious, but that you also use food to heal. So I love that.
Exactly.
So this has been wonderful. Bailey, is there anything else you'd like to share with us in terms of any of your future plans? Obviously, you're on a book tour at the moment. You're traveling around the US, which is wonderful. Anything you'd like to share with us about any future plans that you've got? Or vision?
Oh my gosh, future plans. Honestly,
if we can. I know it's difficult in a way to plan for the future, given that it's so uncertain.
So funny. My husband and I, so we got married in the middle of the pandemic. We eloped because we, canceled our wedding and we're trying to replan it. We were just I don't even want to deal with this anymore. So my biggest future plan right now is to plan our honeymoon. Honestly, I was after this book tour, I'm okay, we need a vacation, because we've been working nonstop since the lockdown hit, which is crazy to think it's been 1.5 years already. But honestly, next year I have some retreats planned already that I'm cooking for, and I don't really know, to be honest. This book just kind of came and swept me off my feet, and I'm here on this book tour, and I'm just so amazed at how well it's going. And maybe another book. I don't know. I kind of just want to keep going, and obviously take a break somewhere in there. But
I think some opportunities will come as well, because you got the book.
Totally.
You never know who's going to see you. I'm sure some amazing opportunities will.
Totally. I mean, it's always been a big, big dream of mine to have my own cooking show, and to be able to have non-toxic appliances. And I definitely have always wanted to be a little bit more of I feel awkward saying this out loud, but just be more of a household name, and to really reach more and more people. So that's always been my big big fat, like my mom calls it like a big fat audacious goal. So that's my big fat
I call them big
audacious
hairy
goal.
audacious goal is what I call it. Yeah, I
Yes,
love it.
yeah. So that's it. Like I definitely want to show, like I would love to be really well connected in that kind of industry as well. And yeah, and honestly, I'll also say like finding really good work-life balance, but because like ever since the lockdown hit, my work-life balance has been horrible. Like I've just been working all the time. I'm like grinding myself to like, to nothing, it feels like some days. And so I'm excited to kind of like once the book tour kind of settles down, and after the holidays, because the holidays are usually really crazy for me, to just like find a little bit of balance. I think that would be really nice because when you are an entrepreneur, you don't clock in or clock out. You're always on the clock. So gotta like remind myself, like work-life balance, like your business will be there tomorrow.
Absolutely. And it can help your business as well. I've been reading stuff about, sometimes particularly entrepreneurs, business owners feel like you've got to work, hustle, and not take a break because you'll be more productive. But actually they're finding that no, when you take those breaks, to chill out, to read, just allow yourself to even be bored, and have a walk, that actually helps you be more productive and more creative. So
yeah,
awesome.
Rest is productive. I totally agree with that.
I love it. This has been so lovely speaking with you, Bailey. So everybody grab yourself a copy of Cook, Heal, Go Vegan, which is available anywhere that you can buy books or ebooks. Check out Bailey's work. You can do that on her website, which is Chef Bay, that's BAI.kitchen. If you're watching the video of this, that URL is scrolling along the bottom of your screen. And if you're listening to the audio version, then that link will be on the show notes page for this episode. Bailey, it's been so lovely speaking with you. I wish you all the best with your book. I really appreciate you being so honest in your journey and sharing both the challenges and as well as the highlights. I think that's really wonderful. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was so fun.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Bye for now.